Your makeup bag is quietly aging you every morning, and most of it is hiding in plain sight. Today I'm counting down 10 makeup mistakes that add years to your face after 60, from the one that does the least damage all the way up to the single biggest offender. Stay until the end because number one might change how you see your reflection tomorrow morning. Hi, beautiful. Welcome to The Timeless Woman, the channel where we prove that looking put together after 60 doesn't take more effort. It just takes the right few pieces. And today that applies to your entire makeup bag just as much as your closet. So let's get into it. Number 10, using foundation that's even slightly too light. This is so common because many of us chose our shade decades ago, in a different season, under different lighting, at a counter we've never gone back to, and simply never revisited it since. But skin tone shifts subtly with age, and less sun exposure over the years often means your natural shade has actually changed without you noticing. A foundation that's a touch too pale sits on top of the skin instead of blending into it, creating a slightly ghostly, flat, almost powdery effect, especially in daylight or on camera, where every mismatch shows. The fix costs nothing but a few minutes at a beauty counter, and it's honestly one of the fastest transformations on this entire list. Ask someone to match you fresh, right now, today if you can, not to the shade you remember being, or the shade written on a tube you've had for years. Number 9. Skipping eyebrows entirely, or drawing them in too thin. Eyebrows frame the whole face. They do more structural work than almost any other single feature, and as they naturally thin with age, an unfilled or overly thin brow can make the whole face look unfinished, almost startled, or simply tired, even on days when you're feeling completely fine. It's such a small area of the face, and yet it changes the entire first impression someone forms of you in a fraction of a second. You don't need a dramatic, drawn-on brow, and please don't go too dark or too sharp. That ages just as much as having none at all. A few soft strokes with a brow pencil in the right shade, following your natural arch and natural growth pattern, restores structure to the entire face in under a minute, and it's genuinely one of the highest impact, lowest effort changes on this whole list. Number 8. Matte lipstick in the wrong undertone. Matte finishes can look beautifully sophisticated, elegant even, the kind of finish that photographs well in the right light. But as lips naturally lose some fullness and moisture with age, a very matte, very dry-looking lipstick in the wrong undertone can emphasize fine lines around the mouth instead of softening them, settling right into the texture and making it more noticeable rather than less. The fix isn't giving up matte lipstick. I know how much some of you love that finish, and you don't have to abandon it. It's choosing a slightly warmer, more hydrating formula, one with a bit of built-in moisture, and applying a touch of balm underneath first, so the color glides on smoothly instead of settling into lines and cracking by midday. Number 7. Heavy, dark eyeliner drawn all the way around the eye. This used to be a classic look, something so many of us mastered decades ago and never questioned since. But a thick, dark line, completely encircling the eye, can make eyes look smaller and more tired rather than more defined, especially once the eyelid naturally softens and the lash line changes shape with age. What once opened the eye now quietly closes it in, and most women have no idea it happened because the change was so gradual. A softer, smudged line along just the upper lash line, in a soft brown instead of harsh black, opens the eyes up instead of closing them in, and it takes genuinely less time to apply than a precise, sharp line ever did. Number 6. And we're halfway through, so quickly tell me in the comments which number you're already guilty of. I promise I read every single one, and it genuinely helps me plan what we cover in future videos. Number 6 is powder applied too heavily across the whole face, every morning, out of habit rather than actual need. A light dusting of powder controls shine beautifully, but a heavy, cakey layer settles directly into fine lines and creases, actually drawing more attention to texture instead of smoothing it away like it's supposed to. Less is genuinely more here, more than almost anywhere else on this list. A light touch, only where you actually get shiny throughout the day, usually just the T-zone across the forehead and nose, does the job without the flat, mask-like effect that heavier application creates. Number 5. ignoring your eyelashes completely. As lashes naturally thin with age, both in length and in number, skipping mascara altogether, or any lash definition at all, can leave the eyes looking washed out and less awake, even when you're feeling perfectly bright and alert on the inside. It's one of those things people notice without knowing why they noticed it. They just register the eyes as looking a little flat, a little less present. You don't need dramatic false lashes, and please don't feel like you have to. A single coat of a lengthening mascara in dark brown, focused mostly on the outer corners where lift matters most, brings the whole eye back to life in seconds, without ever looking heavy or overdone. Number 4. Blush applied too low on the cheek. This one is sneaky because it feels intuitive to apply blush where the cheek is fullest, which for many of us has naturally shifted a little lower with age, but placed too low, it can actually pull the whole face downward visually, adding years instead of taking them away, working directly against everything else you're doing right. The fix is placing blush higher than feels natural at first, closer to the apples of the cheeks and blending up and out toward the temple, which lifts the entire face instead of dragging it down, and once you see the difference in a mirror, you'll never go back to the old placement. Number 3, and this one surprises almost everyone, overplucked or completely absent lower lash liner, paired with a bare inner corner that never gets any attention at all. A thin, subtle line of liner along the lower lash line, or skipping the inner corner highlight entirely, can leave the eyes looking smaller and slightly sunken under certain lighting, particularly overhead light, which is exactly the kind most of us sit under all day without thinking about it. A touch of light, shimmering pencil in the inner corner of the eye, right where the tear duct meets the lid, plus a barely there soft line underneath, brightens the entire eye area instantly, and it's one of those tricks almost nobody talks about, even though makeup artists have relied on it for decades. Number 2, foundation applied with the wrong tool, usually fingers alone, patted on unevenly and left to sit heavily in fine lines and pores instead of blending smoothly across the skin's surface. This isn't about buying expensive tools, and it isn't about spending a fortune at a beauty counter on brushes you'll never use again. A simple damp makeup sponge, the inexpensive kind sold everywhere, bounced rather than dragged across the skin, applies a thin, even, natural-looking layer that settles into skin instead of sitting on top of it like a mask. The difference in photos is honestly dramatic for something so small and inexpensive to fix, and once you try it, you'll wonder why nobody showed you sooner. And now, number 1, the mistake sitting in almost every woman's makeup bag right now, completely unnoticed, hiding in plain sight the entire time. It's makeup that's simply too old. Foundation, mascara, and powder all quietly have a shelf life, usually somewhere between 6 months and 2 years depending on the product and how it's stored, and once they finally pass that point, the formula itself changes on a chemical level, whether we notice it happening or not. Foundation can oxidize and shift shade right there in the bottle, turning slightly orange or gray, without you realizing why your face suddenly looks off some mornings. Mascara dries out and clumps instead of coating smoothly, no matter how good your technique is. Powder can lose its blendability entirely, sitting flat and chalky instead of melting into the skin the way it did when it was fresh. None of this is about your skin aging, and I want you to really hear that, because so many of us blame our faces for something that was never our face's fault at all. It's about product quietly failing you every single morning, and most of us have absolutely no idea, because nobody ever told us to check. Nobody ever mentioned that a $15 tube of mascara has an expiration date, the same way food does. Here's your simple test, and you can do it the moment this video ends. Smell your mascara. If it smells even slightly different from when you bought it, sharper, more chemical, or just off somehow, or if it's been open longer than 6 months, it's time to let it go, no matter how much product is left in the tube, no matter how much you paid for it. Here's your challenge for this week, and I want you to actually walk to your bathroom and do this one, not just nod along and forget about it by tomorrow. Go through your makeup bag and check 3 things: the date on your foundation, whether you can even remember buying it, the smell of your mascara, really smell it, don't just glance at the tube, and the shade you're currently wearing against your actual skin right now, in daylight, not the one you remember matching years ago at a counter you haven't been back to since. If even one of these three feels off, and for most women watching this, at least one will, that's exactly where to start, and it costs far less than you'd think to fix. If any of these hit close to home, and I have a feeling at least one did, do me a favor and send this to a woman in your life who needs to hear it too. A sister, a friend, a mother, someone who truly deserves to feel as radiant on the outside as she already is on the inside. Tell me in the comments which number surprised you most. I read every single one, and it genuinely, truly shapes what we cover next. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss next week's video, because we're not done uncovering the small, simple shifts that make the biggest difference after 60. I'll see you in the next one, beautiful.